can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blur Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Blue Beetle Graduation Day story arc by Josh Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez. This is a new series just recently wrapped up, whose name, Graduation Day, is a little bit of a double entendre. It's a story about Jaime Reyes literally graduating from high school and trying to figure out what he's gonna do with his life now that he's out of high school. He's got to figure out, is he gonna go to college? Is he gonna take a gap year? Which, you know, spoiler alert, that's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to take time to figure out what he does want to do, because he doesn't know if he wants to go to college. He doesn't know if he even wants to be able to be Blue Beetle and try and juggle college and your work and all those responsibilities. He doesn't really know if that's for him just yet. It's also called Graduation Day because this story arc sees Jaime Reyes elevated to the level of what I would call a premier superhero. Now, before the pitchforks come out, I know all the Jaime Reyes stands out there are gonna sit here and say, well, he was already a premier superhero. And I agree with you, because like you, I am a huge fan of Jaime Reyes as well. But what I mean here is that this is pretty much one of the first times since the Prime Earth continuity that the Justice League is actually taking Blue Beetle seriously. You have to remember that even though the events of Doomsday Clock have merged the continuities of New Earth and Prime Earth, as well as various other incarnations of the DC Comics universe together, technically, DC only really focuses on events of the Prime Earth. Even with New Earth kind of being merged into everything, New Earth often gets forgotten about. It definitely gets referenced a lot, but it's never anything that's ever like terribly focused on. So while the events of the original did actually happen and are referenced in this, Jaime is still treated by the Justice League with kid gloves for the most part. And honestly, it's probably for some good reason, because Jaime is a character who is very indecisive. He doesn't really know what he wants to do until he is thrust into the moment. And that's kind of what this comic is all about, showing what Jaime can really do when he's no longer holding himself back, and also just allowing himself to believe that he is the hero that other people see him as. We see him in this comic surrounded by characters like Superman, Batman, Cyborg. We also see characters like Jessica Cruz, Green Lantern, who, by the way, I feel like has been in witness protection for the last couple of years. We also see characters like the Flash, and I would even dare say closer to Jaime in this story, we see characters like OG Teen Titan and current Titan Starfire also taking Jaime under her wing. And there's also some history there between these two characters just based on your original New Earth continuity. But the idea of Starfire taking a vested interest in Jaime's upbringing as a superhero is definitely not a coincidence. We can't forget that one of the main enemies of the Reach was always the Tamaranians, which is where Starfire comes from. So Starfire has a little bit more knowledge and a little bit, I would dare say, more skin in the game when it comes to what happens with Jaime Reyes, considering that the Blue Beetle Scarab that he wields, Khaji-Da, is in fact a weapon of one of Starfire's, I guess you could technically say, ancestral nemesis. And of course, he's also going to have the guidance of his mentor, Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle. And he's not just going to have Ted Kord backing him up in his corner, he's also going to have Victoria Kord, who is the sister of Ted Kord, who has only just been recently introduced into DC Comics continuity. Victoria Kord is an entirely new character for the DC Comics universe. And while I will definitely say there's probably some crosstalk between the movie and the comics, there is a little bit of a difference here. For those who have been keeping up with the Blue Beetle trailer that dropped, I believe earlier this past month or the month before, depending on when this video actually comes out, you will probably recognize this character's name as the one attached to the character that Susan Sarandon is going to be playing in the live action movie. While that character is the villain of that movie, in the comics, it's a little bit different. Victoria Kord is not so much a bad guy. She's just someone with loose morals. Let's put it that way. She is a person who wants to do the most good, but she's also willing to go in directions that maybe Blue Beetle wouldn't necessarily go into. And I'm more talking about her brother Ted Cord when I say that. We see over the course of this series that she is willing to do shady things if it means protecting her city, the world even. He even has his old buddies Brenda Del Vecchio and Paco Testis also rejoining the series, hanging out with him and helping him find his footing, because one of the things I didn't mention is that now that Jaime is out of high school, he's also been grounded by Superman and is told that he is not necessarily allowed right now to wield the Blue Beetle armor or to get involved in any superhero shenanigans. The reasoning for this is that Batman and Superman, as well as the rest of the Justice League, have it on good authority that the Reach is back. And they're not wrong. The Reach is on the way. However, there's also something else that is also on the horizon, and pun intended, it's exactly that. The Horizon, a splinter cell of the Reach, which initially is believed to potentially be bad guys, but that's actually not the case. The Horizon separated themselves from the Reach because they didn't want to be involved in all of the subjugation and enslavement and all the other problematic things that the Reach was willing to do. For those unfamiliar, the Reach is an alien species and conglomeration that pretty much go across the universe, enslaving entire planets. The Horizon didn't want anything to do with that, and since they had splintered away from the Reach, they're now trying to find a new home. And initially, it is believed that they are coming to conquer the Earth and had sent emissaries to get rid of any potential Reach threats. This is why Jaime Reyes has been grounded and told he should probably stay out of the superhero game for a minute until they can figure out what's going on, to make sure he's not being used by the Reach, because that is still a concern of the Justice League at this point, is that maybe Kajida is just playing the long game. Maybe Jaime doesn't have as much control over the Scarab as he initially thought. And understandably, that is a good reason to be worried about Jaime, because Kajida is considered the most powerful weapon that was in the Reach's arsenal at the time. Even the Horizon fear it. They know it well. They know that this weapon could literally destroy entire planets on its own. All of that being said, there is actually some issue between Kajida and Jaime. Right now, they're not communicating. While they're definitely more powerful together than they ever have been in the history of Blue Beetle in DC Comics, it is something that comes up quite a bit, where there's been something that has been scrambling Jaime and Kajida's ability to communicate with one another, to the point where they're miscommunicating with one another. Throughout the course of the comic, we see that Kajida is completely unable to speak with Jaime, at least in any way that Jaime's able to understand. And I think it's even safe to say that Kajida doesn't even understand anymore what Jaime's saying, because things have been scrambled. The Reach is trying to wiggle their way back in and take back the Scarab from Jaime, letting us know that the Reach is, in fact, well on their way. Now, one of the great things about this comic is not just a level of story dedicated to Jaime and him trying to figure out exactly what it is he's going to do this future. It's the fact that he also gets a new power mode called Legado mode, which, for those unfamiliar, that's Spanish for legacy. Don't really know what it has to do with his power levels in this, but just know that in this mode, Jaime is infinitely more powerful than he has been in recent memory. We don't know fully what the Legado armor actually gives Jaime beyond his normal Blue Beetle capabilities. Outside of it, it just makes him feel that much stronger, with him even saying as much. It seems as though the weapons and levels of power he's able to wield now have definitely increased. While he does say he feels stronger, there's a point where he's able to push all of his power reserves enough to stop a falling Horizon starship from crash landing into Palmera City. Now, granted, it takes literally everything in him to pull this off, but still, that's a feat that Jaime would not necessarily have been able to do before now. He's also able to summon even more wilder armor and tech and weapons and all sorts of craziness using this new armor mode, but we're gonna have to wait until Blue Beetle's Scarab War before we really see, what's gonna happen with it. We also see in this the introduction of 2 new Blue Beetles, or rather yellow and green beetles. Let's go ahead and get the one we actually know a bit about out of the way. One of them is named Xiomara Erazo, and while she doesn't necessarily go by the name Yellow Beetle. She actually goes by the name Dynastis, which, as you might imagine, is a type of beetle. The difference between her and Jaime is that while Jaime is able to summon all these crazy gadgets and armor and tech and all sorts of other wild stuff with his armor, it's not to say that Dynastis can't do the same thing. But what makes her different from Jaime is not just the fact that her version of the Scarab is Horizon tech versus being Reach technology. Her beetle grants her superhuman strength and durability on a level unlike anything that Jaime would normally have. As I mentioned earlier, Jaime had to use every last single ounce of the power in the Scarab to stop a falling Horizon starship. However, Dynastis very likely could have done the same thing with much greater ease. Dynastis's power is on a level where she's able to go toe-to-toe with characters like Shazam. She has superhuman strength on a level that would probably even allow her to take on Superman if Supes would have actually showed up before everyone realized that Dynastis and Blue Beetle were on the same side. We don't really know much about Xiomara outside of what she's told us in Blue Beetle Graduation Day number 3, that she was a teacher from El Salvador and that she just stumbled upon the Scarab no differently than how Jaime did during the Infinite Crisis story arc. And that while she does initially come off as a villain when she is first introduced because she's trying to kill Jaime, she's not trying to kill Jaime because she's evil. She's trying to kill Jaime so that she can protect the Horizon who are coming to Earth, because she believes that Jaime is working for the Reach. And even when he tells her that that's not the case, she still doesn't trust him 100% until he actually risks his life to save her. There's also the other beetle, Green Beetle, who goes by the name of Natita. We don't really know much about Natita. We don't even know her real name. All we really know about her is that she calls herself a goth girl from Bloodhaven in passing when talking alongside Blue Beetle and Dynastis. She never says her real name. She doesn't really tell us anything about who she is as a person, and of the two new beetles, she's probably the one we spend the least amount of time with. But what we do know about her powers is that while she seems to be a little bit closer in power set to Blue Beetle, her power deviates when it comes to her armor having some very high level of elasticity. She's able to stretch and contort her body in ways that Blue Beetle cannot. And not only that, she's also able to manipulate her own size to the point where she is well over 50 feet tall, and I think in one case as tall as the Cord Industries building. And while her levels of strength probably may not be quite on the same level as Dynastis, at least not when she's in her normal form, when she manipulates her size, her strength does seem to grow exponentially, making her a whole problem for characters like Superman and Starfire, who are some of the strongest beings in the DC Comics universe. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, don't get too excited if you're a fan of Young Justice thinking that this is somehow the same character from that series. While this character does seem to have some of the same abilities as the Green Beetle from Young Justice, this character is not a Martian, at least not that we know of yet. They could technically be a Martian, but as far as what they've told us so far, it doesn't seem like that's the case. The fact that there are two new Beetles having appeared in the DC Comics universe, it does beg the question, are we gonna get Black Beetle now that the Scarab War is coming? It's hard to say at this point, but considering what Josh Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez have been introducing in the series, I wouldn't find it surprised if they did somehow bring in Black Beetle and maybe even give him some of those same Young Justice origins. Yeah, I could easily see this being more like the Black Beetle from Young Justice, or maybe something similar or along those lines, having it be someone who is working for the Reach and trying to stop Jaime Reyes and help the Reach take over Earth. I could easily see that being a thing here. And hell, who knows? They may even take it in a different direction. I really like how they set all this up because it's very reminiscent of Kamen Rider to me. Like, honestly, Blue Beetle's always reminded me of things like the Guyver and Kamen Rider Kabuto, but this is just taking it even more in that direction, having there be a finite number of Scarabs and some of them being, you know, good guys, and even having maybe one or two of them being villainous. I could easily see this being the thing here. And honestly, if you've never watched or read the anime and manga series Guyver, I highly recommend it. If you've never seen Kamen Rider Kabuto, I highly recommend it. This series is setting up a lot of things, with the Horizon having touched down in Palmyra City and Blue Beetle essentially taking it upon himself to be their protector on Earth while they try and make a home here, which this is going to be big news because this is setting up a showdown. We already know the Scarab War is coming back to Earth, and it's largely going to be because of this. The Reach are already on their way, and with the Horizon there on Earth, it just makes Earth an even bigger target for the Reach to try and go after, especially knowing that they want back Kajida. But anyways, that's pretty much everything I want to talk about with Blue Beetle Graduation Day. I really like what this comic sets up for the future of Blue Beetle, especially with everything going on with Blue Beetle coming up in time for the release of the movie coming out on August 18th of this year. I really can't wait to see what other upgrades and things that they're going to be giving Jaime Reyes on the comic side of things, getting him ready, getting him juiced up and ready for his big screen movie debut. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and also make sure to hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any videos that I put out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know what you think about Blue Beetle Jaime Reyes. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.